the hidden learning disability that many autistic people have. Have you ever been told that you are really bad with numbers? Have you noticed that other people have been able to pick up number sequences and memorizing them and passing their tests a lot more than you could? Well, this is what I want to discuss today, is talking about why this is such a common thing, such a common occurrence that happens for neurodivergent people. They might excel in areas like English or history and memorizing these key details, but when it comes to numbers, that feels like it's just in the too hard basket. Your brain isn't able to grasp onto it, and it's often like you feel as though you might be dyslexic but with numbers. If you guys relate to this, I am speaking to you today, and I hope that within this video I am able to soothe a lot of you, and I am able to bring a lot of answers to you no matter when it was that you left school. I know for myself, I was someone who, did okay at school, did not too badly. I managed at different points throughout my schooling time to achieve like different awards for my writing and for history and for drama, and I was more of an artsy kind of girl. I loved sinking my teeth into learning something new or writing about it, and I loved the expression and the intentionality of writing. But when it came to math, oh my god, that was a completely different story, and science was on the cusp of that as well. Maths for me was something that I just couldn't get the hang of, and from the moment I started school to the moment that I ended school, well, actually a few years before that, because I dropped it as soon as I could. But until the point I could actually drop it, I was in extra tutoring because I was always at the bottom of the class. I was in the classes that needed more support and needed, extra teaching when it came to actually passing tests and exams and all of that stuff. And I just couldn't get the hang of it. In fact, I am now 30 years old, and I hate to be the person to say this, but I still struggle to tell the time on analog clocks. So if any of you are sitting there and like, oh my god, someone said it, I'll be the one to say it, although it's been a very embarrassing thing that I've had to say when someone's asked me the time, and like I might be wearing a watch and it's just for fashion. I'm one of those people. I genuinely thought that all of this was down to me just not trying hard enough, me not being as interested as I was in my books or with acting. And the reality is, once I learned this, a lot of that changed of how I view myself and my brain. And so I thought I would bring that knowledge to you guys today. So let's get into it. If you've ever wondered whether you're neurodivergent or just felt like you see the world a little differently, you're not alone. I was diagnosed autistic at 25, and suddenly so many things I never had words for started to make sense. Here I share the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful parts of life through an autistic lens. My name is Elena Carroll, and if you're looking for answers, understanding, or just an autistic friend, you're in the right place. So today I want to present to you guys a word. As I said, we have heard of dyslexia. That is when you struggle to read and write, and the words, the letters actually get jumbled up and move around and things like that. And the same can actually be said in a different way with a different word known as dyscalculia. If this is the first time that you are hearing it, it's basically what we would use to describe being dyslexic, but with numbers, being able to memorize numbers and sequences, and being able to kind of think in your head about the sequences. I'm someone that still has to count on my fingers, because I can't actually visually see that in my brain. So dyscalculia, I think, is something that a lot of people have heard a lot less of, and I really don't know why that is, because it actually, all of these, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and many other things actually come under what is neurodivergence. And it actually can be a co-occurring condition or a trait that comes along with neurodivergence, is being dyslexic or having dyscalculia. I hope immediately that now I have given you, just a word that you can use and identify with. It's not about you being lazy, and it's not about you, not putting in enough effort or not having enough money to get the extra tutoring or whatever it is. If you have a brain that doesn't kind of formulate or visualize or remember numbers in the same way that, neurotypical brains do, then it just isn't going to be, what's best. Let's say you probably wouldn't want to be an accountant, or maybe you would to push yourself. I don't know. I wanted to tell you guys a story. The only time in the entirety of my life, let's be fair, the only time that I actually was, I would say, good at maths was when it came to remembering your times tables. Multiplication? I haven't heard or said that word since this time period. I was at school and the teacher at the time said, we're going to have an entire school times tables challenge, and this was going to be a full school involvement. And all I heard when he said that was I was going to be zeroed out, I was going to be under the spotlight, and everyone was going to see that I was not going to be able to remember, to know my times tables because I didn't know them. So that night I went home and my mum had kind of this placemat that she used for us to, remember our times tables. And my brother and I never looked at it once. And this night I went and took it away and, remembered up to, 1 to 3 times tables, remembered all of them. And within a week I learnt from 1 to 12, all of my times tables. And this was in preparation for the big school event that never even happened. Why I share this story is in this context, under pressure, I was able to, go away and actually take the time and memorize these times tables. And I do wonder now, as I say that, did that teacher say that to force those of us who didn't know ours through fear of embarrassment? We wouldn't want to be embarrassed in front of the whole school, and it did make me learn them. What I argue with all of that was it was not about me actually knowing what the process was of the times tables. It was just a skill of memory. And I've always had a very, very good memory. And so it was no trouble for me to memorize, 3 times 3 is always going to be 9. It's not going to change unless you add, a different equation. It's always going to be that. And so that's why I excelled at, my times tables. And for that period of my life, that time at my school, when times tables were kind of the curriculum, I did really well, and my teachers would have said that I was doing really well at maths, but it was just a case of memorizing. And then when it came to actually doing equations and sequences, I was back down to square one. So I want to talk about why dyscalculia is actually very common in neurodivergent people. You're probably sitting there wondering, why is it that there are so many of us that have clicked on this video that are relating to struggling with numbers and sequences and directions and all of that? Why do we still have to count on our fingers? The first thing that I want to say is neurodivergent brains process information very differently. What I mean by this is there is kind of this uneven profiling of our brains where we might excel at different areas of our life. As I said in the beginning, I was incredibly intelligent when it came to writing and when it came to history because those were facts. Those were hard and facts, and I could rely on, the creativity of my brain. That is what I would argue. My brain works more creatively than it does with numbers and sequences and directions and all of that. And so what you often see in neurodivergent people is they excel at one area in school or in their life, and other areas of their life kind of drop off and they might have a more challenging time. So you can be someone that is like highly intelligent in a lot of areas and then still have great areas of difficulty, and that's kind of this uneven profile that so many of us have. Another point that I wanted to talk about is visual spatial differences. That's a tongue tie. What I mean by this is numbers are not just numbers. They often require this ability to visualize and have this forethought. There's patterns involved, there's positioning involved, there's sequencing, there's distance, there's directions. And so that's why so many of us do struggle with reading analog clocks. And that's why so many of us struggle to read maps and know left and right. Remembering directions and estimating distances, you know, if you are someone that does struggle with these kind of things as an adult, it probably goes without saying that you were someone that might have struggled a lot with your maths and kind of being able to predict what the answers were. And I think that all of this comes down to, you know, the idea of intelligence, especially at school. I think it's something that is heavily focused on. You're either intelligent or you're not intelligent. And that's kind of the way that students think. You're either really good at something or you're really bad at something. And oftentimes, if people view you as someone who is intelligent, you're not just intelligent in one area, you're intelligent across the board. And that's just so not the reality. You know, it wasn't my reality at all. I was someone that, as I have said throughout this video, I excelled when it came to creative thinking, and I was the bottom of the class, if not failing, when it came to maths and science, and I dropped out as soon as I could. And I think that that surprises a lot of people. And so oftentimes we can make our own kind of conclusions when it comes to these things, like, well, if I'm not good at maths and I'm failing my maths and we see that we're struggling next to our friends or our peers, then when we come to the conclusion that we're not intelligent. And so I just want to, I guess, bring a lot of peace to the inner student of you all who may have condemned yourself quite harshly. It really might be that you struggle with dyscalculia, or you have this uneven profile where you excelled in one area but struggled in another, and it doesn't mean that you are any less of a person or any less intelligent than anyone else. It just means that your brain worked differently to the subjects and to the curriculum that you were learning at the time. And I hope that this gives you guys a little bit more insight into your brain, and that's ultimately what I am always trying to do with my videos. So with that, if you guys would like to learn anything more about your brain, or you would like any coaching from me, my links are down below. I would love to hear from you, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye. Mwah.